My name is Emily. The story I'm about to tell you is a secret I've carried like a stone in my chest. It's not something I can easily admit, but it left me with profound thoughts about emotions, responsibility, and the fragile, often invisible line between right and wrong. Some choices aren't black and white. They exist in the gray, quiet moments where the heart shouts louder than reason. This is one of those moments. It began on a deceptively perfect California morning. My husband, David, had left before dawn for a weekend business trip to Los Angeles. We lived in a charming, modest house by the beach in Santa Monica, a place with large windows that bathed every room in sunlight and filled the air with the constant, soothing rhythm of crashing waves. David, a dedicated financial analyst, loved his work, and I always supported his ambition. Even though his frequent trips had started to make our home feel emptier, quieter with each departure, that particular Saturday, I decided to reclaim the silence. I put on a soft, melancholic jazz playlist, the kind that feels both intimate and lonely, and set about cleaning. The music wove through the sunbeams, creating a calm, airy atmosphere that blended with the salt-kissed breeze drifting through the screens. I was dressed for comfort in a simple white V-neck t-shirt and faded denim shorts. My feet bare against the cool hardwood floor, I was focused on dusting the high bookshelves in the living room, where David kept his collection of vintage novels and a few sailing trophies. Stretching on my tiptoes on a small wooden step stool, as I reached to adjust a slightly crooked picture frame, a photo of David and me smiling on our honeymoon in Hawaii, I had the distinct, unsettling feeling that I was being watched. It was a prickle on the back of my neck, a shift in the energy of the room. I turned, and there he was. Jake, David's son from his first marriage, was leaning against the door frame that led to the hallway. He'd just emerged from his room, his dark hair tousled from sleep, wearing a worn gray hoodie and sweatpants. At 21, he carried the lean, athletic build of a college swimmer, a contrast to David's more solid corporate frame. His eyes, the same shade of ocean blue as his father's, were still heavy with sleep, but they were fixed on me with an intensity that made my breath catch. "Good morning, Jake," I greeted, forcing a cheerful note into my voice. The words felt too loud in the hushed room. "Morning, Emily," he replied. His voice was deeper than I remembered, roughened by sleep. He didn't move from the doorway, his gaze lingering as I turned back to the shelf. Acutely aware of my every movement, he finally pushed off the frame and padded into the room, sinking into the large, cream-colored sofa. I tried to resume my task, but my concentration was shattered. His presence was a tangible thing, filling the space between us. We fell into stilted small talk. He told me about his upcoming final exams at UCLA, his internship applications to engineering firms, the soccer game he'd watched last night. I nodded, making vague sounds of encouragement as I moved the stool to the next section of shelving. My mind was only half on the conversation. The other half was hyper-aware of his eyes following the arc of my arm, the way I tucked a stray strand of honey blonde hair behind my ear. Then it happened. I reached up again, straining for a stubborn bit of dust on a high corner. The stool, old and slightly uneven, gave a sudden, sickening wobble. My arms flailed, the dust rag flying from my hand as my balance vanished. A gasp tore from my throat. "Emily!" In a flash, he was across the room. He didn't just catch me. He enveloped me, his arms wrapped firmly around my waist, pulling me securely against him just as my feet slipped from the stool. The impact was soft, yet jarring. He was solid, real, and he moved with a speed that spoke of pure instinct. For several heartbeats, we stood frozen. The only sounds were the soft jazz, the distant waves, and the ragged sound of my own breathing. My back was pressed against his chest, and I could feel the strong, steady beat of his heart through the thin cotton of my shirt. His grip was secure, one hand splayed across my stomach, the other arm banded around my ribs. He held me not just to stop the fall, but as if he was stabilizing something precious. I was dizzy, but not from the near fall. It was from the closeness, the heat of his body, the faint, clean scent of his soap, sandalwood, and something uniquely him that filled my senses. I could feel the soft brush of his hoodie against my bare arms. Oh my God. I finally breathed out, a shaky laugh escaping me. Good thing you have quick reflexes. I could have cracked my head open. Asterisk, he didn't let go immediately. Nor did he laugh. His head was bent close to mine, his breath warm against the shell of my ear. You have to be more careful, he said, his voice low, a vibration I felt through my spine. It wasn't a son's chiding tone. It was something else, husky, concerned, intimate. Slowly, reluctantly, his arms loosened, allowing me to turn within the circle they made. Now we were face to face, his hands still resting lightly on my hips. The space between us was mere inches. My eyes locked with his, and what I saw there stole the remainder of my breath. The sleepiness was gone, replaced by a blazing, focused clarity. There was confusion in his gaze, yes, and a flicker of shock at our position, but underneath it burned a raw, unmistakable admiration. It was a look that saw me, Emily, the woman, not just Emily. His father's wife. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat of panic and something else I refused to name. I took a step back, his hands falling away, and the loss of contact felt strangely like a chill. I busied myself with adjusting my t-shirt, a futile attempt to regain composure. So, I said, my voice unnaturally high, any big plans for the weekend? Besides saving clumsy stepmoms, that is. He shrugged, a faint crooked smile touching his lips. It transformed his face, making him look both younger and more assured. Not really. Might hit the beach later. Just gonna relax. I nodded, gesturing weakly toward the sofa. I think I need to sit down after that adrenaline rush. We sat. The large sofa had never felt so small. We weren't touching, but the distance felt charged, like the air before a summer storm. The comfortable silence we sometimes shared was gone, replaced by a thick, palpable tension. The jazz melody swelled, a saxophone crying about love and loss. And the sunlight streamed in, painting gold bars across the floor and over Jake's profile. I glanced at him, studying the strong line of his jaw, the way his long lashes cast shadows on his cheeks as he looked down at his hands. He wasn't the little boy I'd met a decade ago when David and I started dating. He was a man. I've always loved mornings like this, I said softly, more to the room than to him. So peaceful, like the world is holding its breath. He turned his head, his blue eyes capturing mine. Me too, he said, his voice just above a whisper, especially when it feels like you're not alone in it. The meaning behind his words hung in the air, heavy and undeniable. It wasn't just a comment on companionship. It felt like a confession. My mouth went dry. Jake. I started, but no words followed. A war was erupting inside me. Every principle, every loyalty screamed at me to get up, to make an excuse, to leave the room. But my body felt anchored to the spot, pulled by a gravitational force I'd never acknowledged before. He saw my conflict. I could read it in the slight tightening of his jaw, the hesitant way he reached out. Not for me, but to brush a speck of dust from the cushion between us. His fingers, long and capable, lingered on the fabric. Sometimes he began, his voice so low I had to lean in slightly to hear, "It feels like you're the only one in this house who actually sees me. Not as David's kid or the college student, but just as me." The ache in his words was my undoing. It echoed a loneliness I knew too well, a feeling of being an accessory in someone else's life. David loved me, But his love was often a busy, distracted thing, filtered through spreadsheets and flight schedules. In that moment, Jake's gaze felt more present, more seeing, than any look David had given me in months. Asterisk without thinking. Driven by a surge of empathy and that dangerous gathering warmth, I reached out. My fingers covered his hand where it rested on the cushion. It was meant to be a comforting, almost maternal gesture. But the second our skin touched, a jolt passed between us, electric and profound dot asterisk the air froze. The music faded into a dull hum. All that existed was the point of contact, the startling heat of his skin under my fingertips. Asterisk he didn't pull away. Instead, he slowly turned his hand, palm up, and intertwined his fingers with mine. His grip was gentle but certain, a silent question and an answer all at once. His eyes searched mine, filled with a turbulent mix of hope, fear, and a longing so deep it stole the air from my lungs. Asterisk, Emily, he breathed my name, and it sounded like a prayer on his lips, something forbidden and cherished. Asterisk, I was lost. The last shred of my resistance crumbled under the weight of that single whispered word. The line I had spent a lifetime carefully walking blurred, then vanished entirely. Asterisk, he leaned in, so slowly it was agony. I saw the intention in his eyes, the silent plea for permission. And God help me, I gave it. A barely perceptible nod, a closing of my own eyes. Asterisk. When his lips met mine, the world didn't end. It rewired itself. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, a breathtaking exploration. It was nothing like David's familiar, affectionate kisses. This was all discovery, the slight pressure, the way his free hand came up to cradle my jaw, his thumb stroking my cheekbone with a tenderness that made my throat tighten. A shiver, born of equal parts ecstasy and terror, raced down my spine. My heart pounded so fiercely I was sure he could feel it. This was wrong. A sin of betrayal so deep it stained the soul. I knew it with every fiber of my moral being. But my body, my traitorous heart, sang a different primal song. In his arms, I didn't feel like a wife, a stepmother, a caretaker. I felt desired, seen, alive in a way I had forgotten was possible. The kiss deepened, fueled by the sudden, raging release of emotions we'd both pent up for who knows how long. His arms wrapped around me, pulling me closer until I was half in his lap, my hands tangling in the soft fabric of his hoodie, then in his hair. He tasted of mint toothpaste and the faint, sweet remnants of sleep. His breaths came in ragged bursts against my skin, each one a whispered promise of ruined doubt. We broke apart, gasping, our foreheads resting together. His eyes were dark, pupils blown wide with desire and shock. I've wanted to do that, he admitted, his voice raw, for so long. I tried not to. I tried to just see you as my dad's wife. But I can't. You're Emily. His confession was a mirror to my own hidden feelings, feelings I'd refused to even name. The attraction I'd dismissed as inappropriate appreciation. The comfort I found in his company that felt different from family. It all coalesced into this terrifying, beautiful truth. Jake, we can't, I managed to say. But my hands were still fisted in his shirt, holding him to me. This is a line we can never uncross. I know, he murmured, his lips brushing my temple, my cheekbone. But we already crossed it the second I caught you. Maybe even before that. He kissed me again, and this time there was a desperation to it, a hunger that matched my own. The logical part of my brain was screaming, a distant alarm, but it was drowned out by the roar of blood in my ears. The feel of his strong hands mapping my back, the overwhelming rightness of being held like I was the center of his universe. His lips traveled from my mouth to the sensitive spot below my ear, then down the column of my throat. I arched into him, a soft moan escaping before I could stifle it. The sound seemed to ignite him further. His hand slid under the hem of my t-shirt, his palms warm and slightly rough against the skin of my waist. I should have stopped him. I meant to, but my own fingers were tugging his hoodie over his head, eager to feel the heat of his skin, the defined planes of his chest and shoulders. We were a tangle of whims and frantic touches, each kiss erasing another layer of denial, each caress burning away the future we were supposed to have. The morning sunlight, once so peaceful, now felt like a spotlight on our transgression. The jazz played on, the saxophone's lament, now a fitting soundtrack to our downfall. I was floating in a haze of sensation, where time lost meaning and consequence felt like a myth. His touch was everywhere, gentle yet possessive, as if he was memorizing me. I ran my hands over the contours of his shoulders, down the firm line of his back, feeling the powerful muscles shift beneath his skin. He whispered my name against my skin like a mantra, each utterance both a question and an answer. Emily. I don't know what this is, he breathed, his lips at the hollow of my throat. I don't know what to do, but I can't stop. I can't stop thinking about you. Seeing you walk through the house, laugh at the dinner table, read on the porch. It's been driving me crazy for months. His words were a balm and a poison. They fed the illicit fire between us while simultaneously painting the stark reality of our situation, a constant, aching temptation under the same roof. I kept his face, forcing him to look at me. In his eyes, I saw my own reflection, wide-eyed, flushed, irrevocably changed. This is a mistake, I whispered, but even to my own ears, it sounded like a lie. A beautiful, terrible mistake. Then let it be a mistake, he said, his voice fierce with a young man's certainty. Just let it be ours. And in that moment I did. I surrendered to the current, letting it sweep me away from the shore of my marriage, my vows, my very identity. The world outside, the crashing waves, the passing cars, the entire structure of my life ceased to exist. There was only the sun-drenched room, the taste of his kiss, the feel of his heartbeat syncing with mine, and the devastating, soul-deep knowledge that I was ruining everything for a feeling I could no longer live without. We didn't go further than desperate kisses and feverish touches. Clothes rumpled but still on, a fragile barrier against the point of no return. But the emotional wine had been vaporized. We existed in a new, secret world, built on stolen glances and electric touches. A world where he was Jake and I was Emily. And the words stepson and stepmother held no power. Then the sound that shattered our fragile bubble. The distinct crunch of gravel under tires in the driveway. The purr of an engine cutting off. A car door slamming. We froze, mid-kiss, a statue of guilt. The front door lock clicked open. Honey, I'm home. Surprise! David's voice, cheerful and booming, echoed through the still house. It was like being doused in ice water. Jake and I sprang apart, a frantic scramble of limbs and panic. He grabbed his hoodie, yanking it back on as I desperately tried to smooth my hair, to wipe the evidence of his kisses from my swollen lips, to straighten my twisted t-shirt. Our eyes met, wide with shared terror. In his, I saw the same devastating crash from paradise back to hell. Emily? David called again, footsteps moving from the foyer toward the kitchen. I'm in the living room. I called back, my voice cracking. I took a deep, shuddering breath, trying to force my frantic pulse to slow. I shot Jake a pleading look. Act normal. He gave a sharp, almost imperceptible nod, shoving his hands into his pockets, his expression shifting with an actor's skill into one of casual relaxation. But the flush on his neck, the rapid rise and fall of his chest, betrayed him. David appeared in the doorway, his suit jacket slung over one arm, a duffel bag in the other, his face beaming. The meeting wrapped up early and I caught a red eye. Couldn't stand the thought of being away from you all weekend. He dropped his bags and opened his arms. I walked into his hug, my body stiff. He kissed my forehead and I flinched, the ghost of Jake's lips still burning on my skin. "I missed you," David said, his voice muffled against my hair. He smelled of airplane air and his familiar cologne, a scent that usually meant comfort, safety. Now it felt like an accusation. "We missed you too," I said, the plural feeling like a betrayal all on its own. "Hey, champ," David said, spotting Jake over my shoulder. He released me and clapped a hand on Jake's shoulder. "What are you two up to?" "Nothing much, Dad," Jake said, his voice remarkably steady. He even managed to smile. "Just hanging out. Welcome back. How was LA?" Asterisk, it was great. Closed the deal faster than we thought. David was already launching into a story about his client. His flight, his taxi ride home, the energy of his successful trip filling the room and highlighting the heavy, secret silence between Jake and me. Asterisk, I stood there, smiling until my face ached, nodding at all the right places. But I was screaming inside. Every word David said was a nail in the coffin of my guilt. He was happy, trusting, proud of his son, happy to see his wife. He was completely, blissfully oblivious to the tectonic shift that had just occurred in his own home. Asterisk, you look a little flushed. David said, peering at me with mild concern. "You feeling okay?" Asterisk, just a little warm, I stammered, fanning myself weakly. "I was cleaning. Got the blood pumping." The lie tasted like ash. Asterisk, well, sit down, relax. "I'll make us some coffee." He headed toward the kitchen, whistling a tuneless melody. Asterisk, the second the kitchen door swung shut, the false calm evaporated. Jake's eyes locked onto mine, a storm of anguish, longing, and panic. Asterisk, we have to stop, I whispered, the words tearing from my throat. Asterisk, I know. He whispered back, taking a half step closer. The magnetic pull was still there, a live wire between us. "But God, Emily." Asterisk, no, I said, firmer this time, hugging myself. "This family, your father, we can't." Asterisk, he stared at me, and I saw the battle raging within him, the loyalty to his dad warring with this new, all-consuming feeling. Finally, he nodded, the light in his eyes dimming. He looked shattered. David returned with 3 mugs of coffee, his cheerful narrative continuing. I took mine with trembling hands, the hot ceramic barely registering. Jake accepted his and retreated to the large window, staring out at the ocean as if it held an escape route. Asterisk, I sat beside David on the sofa, the same spot where, minutes before, I had been in his son's arms. He took my hand, lacing his fingers with mine. It was a familiar, loving gesture, but all I could feel was the ghost of Jake's hand, the way his fingers had intertwined with mine with such deliberate, heart-stopping intention. David's touch now felt foreign, a placeholder for a connection that had just been violently rerouted. The following days were a special kind of torture. The house became a minefield of charged silence and stolen, guilty glances. I threw myself into the role of the perfect wife with a manic energy, cooking David's favorite meals, asking detailed questions about his work, initiating intimacy with a desperate fervor I hoped would erase the memory of Jake's touch. Asterisk, but it was like trying to paint over a stain. The truth seeped through every crack. David noticed a change, but he misinterpreted it. "You've been so attentive lately," he said one evening, nuzzling my neck as we did the dishes. "I love it. Maybe I should go away more often." He meant it as a joke, but it felt like a knife to my conscience. Jake and I developed a painful, silent dance. We avoided being alone together, yet our eyes would find each other across the dinner table, in the hallway, through the kitchen window. A single glance could hold an entire conversation of regret, desire, and despair. He started spending more time out of the house, at the gym, at the library, with friends. The emptiness when he was gone was its own kind of ache. The tension reached its peak one afternoon about a week later. David was at a golf outing. The house was quiet. I was in the backyard, viciously deadheading roses, trying to punish the blooms for their perfect, fragile beauty. I heard the sliding glass door open and close. I didn't need to turn around. I felt him. He stood a few feet away, the air between us crackling. "We need to talk," Jake said, his voice quiet but strained. "There's nothing to talk about," I said, my back to him, my shears snipping with unnecessary force. "You're avoiding me. We're avoiding this. It's killing me, Emily. I see the way you look at me when you think no one's watching. I see the guilt. I feel it too, but I also feel everything else." I turned then. The late afternoon sun hallowed him, but his face was shadowed with pain. He looked older, wearier than a 21-year-old should. "What do you want me to say, Jake?" My voice broke. That I think about it every second? That I lie awake next to your father and remember the way you kissed me? That I'm drowning in shame? It doesn't change anything. It only makes it worse. He took a step forward. "It doesn't feel wrong when it's happening. It feels like the only right thing I've ever known." His words were a siren's call. I wanted to run to him and run from him in equal measure. "It is wrong," I insisted, tears welling. "Not because of what we feel, but because of the people we destroy. Your dad loves you. He trusts us. That has to mean more than a moment of confusion. Was it just a moment?" He challenged softly, his eyes searching mine. "Or was it the truth we've both been too afraid to see?" I had no answer, because he was right. It wasn't a moment. It was an earthquake, and we were standing in the ruins of the life we knew. "I can't live like this," he said finally, his shoulders slumping in defeat. "Seeing you every day, pretending. It's not fair to you, to Dad, or to me." He took a deep, ragged breath. "I applied for an internship. A really good one. In New York, I heard back this morning. I got it." The news hit me like a physical blow. Relief and a devastating sense of loss warred within me. New York, a continent away, safety, an end to the torture dot, and the end of seeing him every day. That's amazing, Jake," I managed to say, my voice thick. "Your dad will be so proud. I haven't told him yet." He looked at me, his gaze deep and unbearably sad. "I wanted to tell you first. Because this is me doing what you said. Letting go. For the family." A single tear escaped and traced a path through the garden dust on my cheek. He saw it, and his own eyes glistened. He took one last, long look at me, as if memorizing my face in the golden light, then turned and walked back into the house without another word. I stood there until the sun dipped below the horizon, the roses blurring into a smear of color through my tears. He was choosing the noble path, the right path, and it felt like a death. That night, over a dinner I could barely taste, Jake told David his news. David was ecstatic, leaping up to hug him, talking excitedly about the opportunities, promising to help him find an apartment, his face alight with paternal pride. I smiled and congratulated him, playing my part perfectly. Jake's eyes met mine across the table, a quiet, sorrowful acknowledgement passing between us. We were co-conspirators in our sacrifice. The week before he left passed in a blur of practicalities and unspoken goodbyes. Packing boxes filled the hallway. David's cheerful energy was a constant, oblivious backdrop to the silent elegy Jake and I were living. The morning of his flight arrived. David had an early meeting that promised to meet us at the airport later. It was just Jake and me for the final moments in the house. We stood in the foyer, his luggage by the door. The early light was the same as it had been that fateful morning, making the memory a fresh wound. "Well," he said, Shifting his weight. Take care of yourself in New York, I said, my hands clasped tightly in front of me to keep from reaching for him. Eat something besides pizza. Call your dad. He nodded. I will. He hesitated, then took a step forward. Not to embrace me, but just to be closer. Emily, I need you to know something. It wasn't a mistake to me. It was real, and I'll carry it the right way from now on. I promise. Tears flooded my eyes. I know, I whispered. So will I? He finally closed the distance, wrapping his arms around me in a tight, fierce, final hug. It was a hug of grief, of gratitude, a farewell. I buried my face in his shoulder for one last, stolen second, breathing him in, feeling the solid reality of him for the last time. Then I pulled back before I shattered completely. Goodbye, Jake. Goodbye, Emily. He picked up his bags, gave me one last long look that held a universe of what could have been, and walked out the door. I watched from the window as his Uber pulled away, the car shrinking until it was swallowed by the sun-drenched coastal road. The house was profoundly, achingly silent. The stone in my chest had grown heavier, but it was now a burden I had chosen to carry. I had chosen my marriage. I had chosen David. I had chosen the beautiful, painful stability of a love that was built. Over a love that had erupted like a wildfire. Our story didn't have a conventional happy ending. There was no running away together, no dramatic confession, no storybook romance. Sometimes the bravest love isn't the one that fights to be together against all odds. Sometimes the bravest, most heartbreaking love is the one that walks away to preserve the sanctity of what already exists. To protect the people you care about from scorching truth, I heard David's car pull into the driveway later that evening. I was in the living room, staring at the now perfectly clean, dust-free bookshelf. The step stool was tucked away in a closet. He came in, his face still bright from the proud send-off at the airport. Well, our boy is off to conquer the Big Apple, he said, coming to sit beside me. He put his arm around me, pulling me close. It's going to be quiet around here without him. Yes, I said softly, leaning my head against his shoulder, finding a familiar, if altered, comfort there. It will. I looked out the large window at the endless rolling ocean. The waves continued their eternal cycle, washing the shore clean with every tide. Life, like the ocean, moves on. It carries away pieces of our past, sometimes gently, sometimes with a violent tug, and deposits new possibilities in their place. I had chosen to stay on the shore I knew, to nurture the garden I had planted, even if I would forever remember the scent of a forbiddance. Storm-tossed sea, I had chosen to carry on, holding the secret, the beauty, and the pain within me a silent testament to the complex, often contradictory geography of the human heart. And in that choice, I found not happiness, but a hard-won peace, the only kind that can weather any storm.